back then. And Tom has been my UFO mentor for years and years and years. And as a result of meeting Tom, I set up a BBS, a bulletin board locally in Toronto called UFO Updates, which grew like Topsy and became on the web probably one of the premier email lists about UFOs. The original, I think, email list.
Original, for sure.
And I'm still doing that UFO stuff today. I did 8 years at two of the major talk radio stations in Canada, one in Montreal, one in Toronto. 8 years of UFOs, strange days indeed. Have a website called virtuallystrange.net, which will take you to the UFO Updates email archives and a lot of the work that Tom and I did together back in them days.
Mm-hmm. So how many years has it been now since the UFO Updates started?
I started it as a BBS in late 1995, so 95, it's been 15 years.
Because the internet has only started, what, in 96, 97?
No, it had started by then, but it took me a long... I didn't want to buy myself a PC. Because I had a beta video recorder in the early days, and it became obsolete and went to VHS, and I didn't want to get involved with anything that was going to be obsolete again. Yeah, it's astounding how far the technology has come. Tom and I are sitting in my little recording studio, and this program is being recorded on a netbook, a little tiny 10-inch screen with all of the... a $300 machine and a few pieces of software, and 10-15 years ago, to do what we're doing now would have cost $500,000.
In a huge studio.
Yeah. and now we're sitting in my basement with a couple of microphones and a mixer and this. It's astounding how it has all come down to you being able to listen to us nattering away here. Well, mostly me. Tom's grinning and smiling a lot and nodding.
Tell us some of the more interesting cases or some of the interesting stories that you heard during your radio days here with UFO Update.
I think probably my favorite one is the O'Hare International Airport incident, where there was this enormous disc that was hovering over one of the terminal buildings there and was seen by all kinds of ground crew. A gray day, this thing was hovering at a couple of 100 feet over one of the terminal buildings. While they were watching it, it suddenly shot up through the clouds, punched a hole in the cloud where you could see the blue sky through that circular hole in the clouds. That's one of my immediate favorites, I think, the one that comes to mind. Oh, it was some sort of weather inversion.
Well, there's always an explanation, right?
Yeah, it's either swamp gas or it's Venus or it's weather balloons or flares from aircraft or nighttime parachute jumpers or Chinese wedding lanterns.
There's always an explanation.
In the Malmstrom Air Force Base, and the day that UFOs appeared over the missile launch sites at Malmstrom in, Minnesota? Mm-hmm. Suddenly the missiles went into countdown mode for no reason other than a UFO being reported hovering over the silo by the guards, the sentries that were up there. Went into countdown mode and then fortunately didn't launch, but shut down, and the only way they could get them to restart was to bring in the technicians who spent several days getting them back up and running. Yeah, and that was a weather inversion, and that was Venus, and that was swamp gas, and Chinese wedding lanterns floating in the sky. Yeah.
Did you hear of any real interesting stories locally here?
In
Toronto area?
In the Toronto, Ontario area. Well, you remember that the night we were having a MUFON meeting back in, 1996, 1997? At Yonge and Eglinton in Toronto.
Yep.
And one of our MUFON members was looking out of the window of my apartment and said, "Look, what's that?" And several of us got up and said, Oh, that's nothing. That's just contrail. It was like a series of backslashes in the sky. And we went back to our meeting. And about 10 or 15 minutes later, Sue said, "No, that ain't no contrail." And we looked to the west, and there beyond the approach way to Pearson International Airport here in Toronto, there was this bright light shining toward us. And so we all rushed out onto the balcony and spent a long time trying to make video of it with a little handy cam. And the crescent moon was setting. I mean, it was up there for, what, an hour and a half? Yeah. The crescent moon sort of set around it. The light eventually went out, and you could still see a smudge outline of a disk. And it was a long way away. When you talked to the air traffic control radar, they didn't have anything on their radar, and they went back and looked at the recordings. Nothing there. And the sun set, and this thing just disappeared into the gloaming, into the darkness. And that was the same night that TWA 800 was shot down, or went down, or blew up off Long Island in New York. Mm-hmm. Yep. Very strange days. Indeed.
Indeed. Well, our time is almost over. I want to thank Errol Bruce Knapp for being a great guest and giving us some great information. And we'll talk to you again next time.